Hey guys, this is Varien again, talking about making orchestral music in FL Studio using the Razer blade. One of the main components of modern orchestral music, or rather modern film, video games, cinematic music, is that there's a lot more incorporation of electronic elements. So we're going to dive a little bit into that today. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up Massive because I want a nice sub-swell. These sound amazing in the theater, and it's kind of one of the staples of trailers these days. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a AI wavetable. It's going to sound like this. Pitch it down an octave. Pitch it down another octave. So you get this sort of meh sound, but don't worry, it's going to sound great. Going to make it 6 voices by going under the voicing tab in Massive. Then we're going to go to pan position and make sure it's on full. So now we've got a full stereo that. We're going to give it some movement by taking an LFO and placing it right on the wavetable position and finding that sweet spot where it doesn't sound like EDM-y, it sounds more like it's just an envelope that's just opening up. Want to make sure that the actual rate that it moves throughout the wavetable is nice and slow and gradual. So maybe 1:1 ratio, maybe even 2:1. Let's see what this sounds like. So that was too slow. And that has too much high end, so we're going to switch around the wavetable position. And let's try this. Okay. So now we're going to add a lot of distortion. And keep in mind, this isn't what the final product is going to sound like. This is merely the building blocks for a major part in making this sound, which is a lot to do with EQing and filtering. But ultimately, you want something like this sound. What we're gonna do to give it that cinematic feel is we're actually gonna do a high cut. I've got FabFilter Pro Q2 up, so I'm going to take the frequency knob and sort of just go back and forth in like a hill-like motion to get this swell. So to mock it up for you, it's going to sound something like this. It's just going to be pure sub. So it's going to sound like that when it's automated. Luckily, I've already done that. But before we finally call it a day on this, we're going to add a lot of reverb. We're going to do a major low cut on this because it is a bass sound. We're going to bring up the wet knob, bring up the decay, pull down on the dry so it sounds really far back and more ambient than an actual consolidated bass instrument, because we've got one that's going to stand further in front of us. So altogether, when we apply the hill automation, it's going to sound like this. And that's all you need. That's all you need as just a simple layer. So the next piece of the puzzle is getting an arpeggiator, because the cellos usually move in an ostinato, which is that dun 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 sort of sound. And you kind of want to mimic that with a synth. So I've got a very basic arp here. You can make it in silent, massive, spire, and it sounds a little bit like this, so you just got to find the right octave. You can go a low octave if you're doing something more sci-fi, or get something with actual tonality. And as you can see, there's already a lot of reverb. There's a high cut, same exact treatment as the sub swell, but this isn't going to swell. This is actually going to be the movement in the electronic portion of this. So alone, it sounds like this. So when you put the sub swell and the arpeggio together, this is what you get. And that's just about creating a big space that's driving. And nothing is too aggressive, nothing is too in your face or EDM, and you want that because once you start throwing back in orchestral stuff like this string riff that I mocked up just by doing a very basic minor third, da-na-na-na-na-na-na, very Hans Zimmer sort of thing. It all sort of, you can actually take down the violins and even just make it even more drawn back and subtle. That's gonna really be your cinematic feel. It's just that subtlety, that nothing is piercing, nothing is calling your attention too much. It's all just sort of setting the tone, which is your job as a composer. Your job as a composer is not to take the limelight. It's to set the mood. It's to build the atmosphere. So that about does it for this on a very basic front. You can take this to the moon and do an entire score just with electronic stuff and then just have elements of orchestral stuff. You can actually kind of flip it in terms of priority. But so yeah, that's electronic hybrid orchestral stuff done in FL with the Razer blade. So see you guys next time.